Welcome to the Troubled Artists Podcast, episode 21, Natasha Tynes.
Welcome back to the Troubled Artists Podcast. Today I am here with Natasha Tynes. Natasha Tynes is a Jordanian-American author and communications professional based in Washington, D.C. Natasha runs her own digital media agency, Suburban Media Group, where she advises clients on the best digital media practices for their brand. Natasha Tynes is a regular contributor to a number of publications inside and outside the United States. Her work has appeared in the Washington Post, Nature Magazine, Elle Magazine, The Post, Esquire, and among others. She is also the host of the podcast Read and Write with Natasha, where she chats with authors, publishers, and book marketers from around the world. And she is currently the author of the speculative literary novel They Called Me Wyatt. So Natasha, thank you so much for being on the show. So before we begin, I do like to ask this question. Tell us, in your own words, who is Natasha Tynes?
Sure. First, thank you, Cesar, for having me on this podcast. So yeah, you did a good job of introducing me, but I am an author, communications professional, and a ghostwriter as well. So I run my after working as a journalist and a communications professional and being an author for 25 years, I decided to start my own business. I help people publish their books, whether through ghostwriting, where it's kind of done for you approach, or through book coaching, which is done with you, which is they write the book and I coach them through it. We do live editing sessions, accountability, and recently I launched the program Finish Your Book in 120 Days. And so it's kind of a challenge where people come with a clean slate and we finish the first draft in 120 days. I am also a published author. In addition to They Called Me Wyatt, last month I published another speculative novel called Karma Unleashed, and it's a suburban thriller set between the Middle East and the U.S. suburbs.
I am curious to know just how you got into being a writer or a book coach in the first place. Was it something that you wanted to do like early in life or later on in life? Just why don't you tell us about that?
Yeah, sure. So I've been writing since I was like in elementary school, and I started publishing in newspapers when I was, I think, 19 or 20. And then I got a master's degree in journalism. So I've been publishing for, as I said, for over 25 years, since the 90s, before email was a thing. Yeah, I'm that old. And then I also loved creative writing, non-fiction writing. And I started publishing short stories in journals. And then I started publishing novels, like after my stories were accepted in literary journals. I was like, you know what? I actually have a talent for this and people like my stories. So I started publishing books. And then, funny, the book coaching happened kind of organically because I never planned to be a book coach, but I used to post about my books and about my writing process, just on Facebook for my friends, and not with the intention to build a book coaching business. And then people started approaching me like, hey, I'm publishing a book, can you help me? And then I was like, and then at least 3 different people started approaching me, and I was like, wow, there's a big need for this. People and I naively assumed like everyone knows how to write a book, and I was like, actually no, they don't. And I was suffering from like the curse of knowledge, where I thought everyone knew what I knew, but then I realized no, people actually need this help. And then I got really encouraged because 2 of the people that I coached signed publishing deals. And that made me realize like, wow, this is, I'm actually helping people and helping them achieve their dreams. So I found it very rewarding, and I decided to kind of double down on it. So yeah, and as for the ghostwriting, it also happened organically. I was approached by a ghostwriting company and to ghostwrite memoirs, and I really enjoyed it as well. And occasionally they also send me some people that I work with, and I also do my own ghostwriting for clients. So if somebody comes to me, they want to write a book, and I tell them, again, I can ghostwrite it for you, or I can coach you how to do it.
There are a lot of people out there that want to do, creative things, or like in this case, writing, but they don't know where to start. And a lot of people, like I said before, like they try to find that support and they try to look for advice that other people give them. Because, there are people out there that are very, some people are supportive of their art dreams, or some people aren't. So something that, I like to do. But in this case, I am also an artist. I like to make films, actually. So, but I've had my share of writing when it comes to like scripts and stuff like that. So I understand, there are days where, it's easy to write down stuff, and then there are days where it's like you get that writer's block. It's tough to even write a sentence. So I understand like where those people are coming from. So, but yeah, I really appreciate that answer. I want to get into some of the questions that I had sent to you. So the first one being, how does your multicultural background help shape your storytelling?
Yeah. So I was born in the Middle East in Amman, Jordan, and I moved to the US 20 years ago, and I still cannot get rid of that accent, but that's fine. So they tell you write about what you know. So my stories always have a Middle Eastern edge to them. So most of my characters are either living in the Middle East, mostly in Jordan where I grew up, or moved to the US. And so I talk about the immigrant experience, identity, the definition of home. So it really shapes me because that's who I am. That's what I know. I'm kind of a bridge between these two cultures, and that's a reflection of my characters as well. They kind of mirror what I know. And it also, when I write nonfiction, I also see things within the lens of the Middle East. Although I've been living in the US for a long time now, but I still go visit the region. I have connection to the region. And plus my formative years were in Jordan. So it's really hard to write anything without kind of filtering it through the lens of where I grew up and what my culture is.
Yeah, that's great to hear. I do feel like it's important to just remember where you came from, and it is really great, just to infuse like that cultural experience or those personal experiences that you have into your writing. And it makes people aware just of like, if they're not aware of Jordan or the stuff that goes on in Mexico, or stuff like that. So it is really great that we as artists have like that capability to showcase like this world, whether it's through a novel or through a film or through a painting. It's a great art form that we can showcase and make audiences see this whole new perspective on the world. So I always say that artists are very powerful because we have this tool that can showcase like this grander experience. I want to get into like some of the books that you were writing. I know that you showed us this latest one, but in particular the one that came out, They Call Me Wyatt. Could you walk us through like the journey and like the upbringings on how that book came about? And then, if you also want to share like other short stories that you've published.
Sure, yeah. So the book They Called Me Wyatt, which is my debut novel, actually came to me in a dream, which was an interesting experience. Is I had a dream that I was killed. I was pushed by someone from a roof of a building, and I fell to my death. But then I was reincarnated, and I woke up in the body of a 3-year-old boy. And the next morning, I kept thinking about this dream, and I wrote it as a short story, actually, and I shared it with my writers group because I had a group of writers that we used to review our work. They really liked it, and they told me, Natasha, maybe you should turn this into a novel, which I did, and I'm glad I listened to them. So that book is the idea is this woman gets killed, but the police thinks it was suicide. And so the boy when he was young, he used to talk about his past life and nobody believed him. And then he stopped talking about it when he grew up. And then when he became a young man, he finds out about that story through social media, like on the anniversary of the death of that woman. And then he gets obsessed. He doesn't know why, but he's just obsessed with that story, and he wants to really understand what happened to that woman. And so you have to keep reading to see if the main character, her name is Siwar, found justice at the end.
Wow. Yeah, that does sound like a very interesting read. I definitely have to check it out. Is it like available like on Amazon right now or?
Yeah. You can just Google my name and you get all my books on Amazon, and I can also send you a direct link to it. But yeah, it's available, and but I try to put all of my books on my website and also on Amazon, and I have to also put them on Ingram Spark, but I've been busy.
Yeah, okay. But yeah, no, that's great to hear because I want other people to check it out because it does sound like I said like a very interesting read. So I'll be sure to put like a link in the description to Amazon and so people can check it out and then also to your website as well. But yeah, what about like other short stories that you published? Like I said, there was one that you were just showing me a couple minutes ago. How about like that one in particular? How did that one come about?
Sure. So I've been publishing a number of short stories. I started in magazines, and I'm going to show you this book. One of them got picked to be in an anthology here. It's called Stories from the Center of the World. This was published last year, especially because of what's happening in the Middle East and the war. So they wanted to have perspective from people from the Middle East, and they picked one of my short story called The Agency that was published in a publication called Al Markez Review, and it's about a matchmaker in Amman, Jordan, and she is this matchmaker is like a career-oriented woman. She has like a master's degree, like she's a business owner, but she creates this agency, and she created a system to pick brides for men who are interested, and she created a system which is like a virginity level. And which is kind of it's funny and ironic, and so because all men want virgins, and then she kind of created that level, level 1, level 2, level 3, and so people come and they pick, I want level 1, I want level 2, level 3. So it's kind of like a funny sardonic short story which has about the woman's journey, especially in the Middle East, the pressure on women to be pure and all of that. So that's basically the idea.
Okay. Yeah, wow, that's really cool. And that's also on Amazon as well?
Yeah, it's called Stories from the Center of the World, and it's edited by Jordan El Garbly, who is the editor of the Markez Review, who also that's where I publish sometimes book reviews there and short stories.
Okay, yeah, okay, that's really cool. Again, I'll make sure people check that out, and because again, it does seem like a pretty fun and interesting read. So it seems like that you've done a lot just like with your writing and your book coaching. So it seems like that you've been doing pretty well. And I was just curious to know just what have been some of the major highlights in your creative career so far?
Mm. Oof. Major highlights. I guess being on long time ago, being on Larry King TV show on CNN a number of times, giving interviews. That was, like big TV shows. That was a big one. I also won an award for one of my short story. It was the F. Scott Fitzgerald Award, which is based on a conference here they do in Maryland. That was another big one. Another one is I won a scholarship to finish my master's in international journalism 20 years ago. That was a big highlight. What else? And for me is in terms of now, my biggest success when I see my clients publish their books. Honestly, that is for me the most rewarding thing, because it's basically emphasizes that I am doing what I should be doing, that I am helping people, and at the same time I'm making a living out of it, and I'm really enjoying it. So that is, one of my biggest highlights is when I get a text message, I signed the contract, I did that. So that's basically always very rewarding.
Yeah.
And actually also when having my short stories being picked up in this anthology, which was published by big publishers, the City Light Books in San Francisco. So that's another highlight as well.
Yeah, definitely. Well, yeah, again, just congratulations on all that success that you've had so far. And but yeah, it's really cool that you acknowledge just like other people's success as well, like you said, with when they publish their books. And I just think that is like such a rewarding feeling, just seeing other people that you remember like growing up or just like starting from somewhere, and then you see them like have this success as well, whether it's like, like you said, in this case, publishing their novel, and it's just really great, just to, I've said this before, but just be supportive of other artists' dreams out there, because, you don't know like where they came from, if they had that support to begin with. So it's always good that they have someone to fall back to, and just to have someone that was always there for them, ready to cheer them on, But yeah, I did want to talk about this question that I had, which was, what are the core challenges that you face as an author in this digital age?
In the digital age, I mean, in terms of challenges, it's probably sometimes it's hard to be seen or to be your work to be recognized, because there's a lot of material out there, and people are mostly interested in a video format rather than a written text. So, and you notice people consumption, most days they're like, they sit on their floor and they're scrolling. And the text because I remember when I used to commute to DC from the suburbs, and I get on downtown DC and I get on the train, like 20 years ago, people had books. Now, nobody, like I'm the only one with the book, right? And everyone is like just scrolling on like TikTok or Instagram. And I realized that, and I've always been kind of text oriented, and I realized that I had to jump on the video formatting to also attract the attention to my book. So I started teaching so I had a YouTube channel and creating reels, and that was a challenge for me, because even when I studied journalism, it was not broadcast journalism, it was print and online journalism. And that was back in like the early 2000s, just a long time ago. And so I had to figure out all the technical side of basically what you do as a filmmaker. So I had like what camera to use, what about the lighting, what about the microphone, what about the positioning, and how do I sound. And when I first started like creating reels to talk about the writing process or my books, I remember like people would like, she's like, Tasha, what is this? You sound like an angry teacher, because like I would like wave at people with my finger like this. But it was funny, and they were saying, it was a joke. And but I had to go through like the angry teacher phase to learn. And it did not come naturally to me, honestly, and I'm still learning, I'm sure like I have to fix my lighting here. I forgot to turn on my lights, but it's okay. So like all that stuff, and doing that research. So I think that for me is making sure I grab the attention of my text through the visual platforms.
Yeah, I think it's great that like that we're trying to be like learning new things as artists, like you said, learning the video format, or learning, because there are other artists that are kind of falling in that same category, like they've done so much with like their art form that there's like this whole new thing that they may need to learn, because the world is constantly changing every day. And something that I've discussed in previous episodes was just the evolution of AI, and how that can be, the art that we see there is just artificial. And, we've talked about like the goods of AI, the bads of AI, and just overall, I feel like it's just something that's just like a tool that we have, we can't let it overtake our creative choices, because I feel like everything should be coming from like an original source. Because like I said, sometimes I would use it just to, maybe get an idea, or maybe to rewrite a text here and there. But, for the most part, I just, like I use it like sparingly, but that's just like a conversation. I don't know if you had any opinions on artificial intelligence.
On AI?
Yeah.
For me, I belong to the minority of I love AI.
Okay.
And I know that's like a controversial topic, especially for writers. But for me, when people ask me about AI and some of my clients and all of that, so AI for me, it can break the fear of the empty page, which is it can help you create a very rough first draft. And you're probably going to change all of it, right? But the reason for that, like rough first draft, is because it get you started. Or, sometimes before you start any task, you get this like agitation. Your brain is like agitated before it gets into the flow. And AI helps you kind of reduce that friction and just like, oh, I have a draft. So you suddenly get in the flow. And I like it this way rather than, sometimes I write and I ask AI I brainstorm with AI. And sometimes I do it the other way around, where I can give me an outline. And I was like, And then when I see the outline, I immediately get in the flow and I start fixing and adding and stuff. So it becomes like an editing partner sitting next to me, a brainstorming partner. And I didn't have that before. And when I didn't have that before, I procrastinated on many tasks. Because why do we procrastinate? Because we have the fear of not being able to perform the task, or we fear that our work is not that good, or we don't know where to start. Subconsciously, we procrastinate. But when I have that person sitting next to me, like holding my hand, we got this, it makes me more productive. I said probably among the minority, and it's a controversial opinion, but this is how I feel about it.
Okay. Yeah. No, I think that's great. Like how you said, it could be like a great writing partner, and it can, it is good to think about like how it can help overcome like that artist's fear of of procrastinating, or at least getting something written down on the page, because, you know, you can edit something, but you can't edit nothing, you know? So,
Yeah.
and then especially, yeah, for that first draft, because, you know, you're probably going to change like 95% of it, you know, because,
Yeah.
so, but yeah, but it is a good way to think about it, because, you know, there are, you know, good things about AI and there's some bad things about AI, you know, so, but yeah, it's good just to sort of see like the balance between that. And yeah, for me, you know, like there's a whole thing about AI and like film, and just like there's a whole thing with like music and videos, and, you know, it broadens like the entire world as artists, you know.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Yeah, like I could see like the good and bad of it, but yeah, but I think overall, you know, if we use it, like you said in this case, like sort of a writing partner, or like just to get like an idea, you know, especially to overcome like that first draft, I think that's important
Yeah.
to have. So, is there any like last minute advice that you want to share to any up and coming artists or authors that are listening in right now?
Sure. Yeah. And I think, especially for anyone who wants to write a book, is at the end of the day, you have to treat it like a job and not wait for the inspiration to come. Like, if you have a job, you're not going to say, oh, I'm not inspired today, I'm not going to go to work. Or you're not going to have like a work block or a job block. And the same thing with like writer's block, or whatever you want to call it, is you have to get rid of that noise in your head and just show up the same way you would show up to go to work, even if you don't feel like it. And that's kind of where, if you really and then the minute you start, then you get into the flow. So it's just what your thoughts are or feelings is, you just have to kind of get rid of them or mute them if you really want to actually publish a book and achieve your dream of publishing a book.
Thank you for tuning in to the Troubled Artists podcast. Have a great day.